All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to all of our viewers around the world. I think it's fair to say we have our guest today literally around the world from us, and we've been hearing from people around the world. So I suspect that you're watching from all corners. Thanks for joining us for the Q&A session with Fabian Almazan as part of the Knox College Jerome Mirza Virtual Jazz Residency. We are thrilled to be able to present this residency for you. Of course, it takes a lot of people to put that together. Knox College itself has been an incredible support. The Jerome Mirza Foundation, unbelievable supporter of this experiment. Provost Mike Schneider, President Teresa Amat, the Knox College Communications Office, Bria Cunningham and Lisa Van Riper in particular have been instrumental. iMagic Works for our stunning graphic design. We love the look. And of course, Andy Crawford, our managing director, who makes everything look easy and seamless. And I'm sure it's not, but he never complains and always does an amazing job. He's always the man behind the scenes, making everything look great for all of us. And I want to thank, and by way of introduction, thank and introduce today's keynote resident artist, Fabian Almazan, composer, band leader, pianist, educator, founder of Biophilia Records, which is an incredible label that I think we'll speak about a little bit later. The mission statement discusses it as a family of musicians that inspire audiences with their music and future generations with their actions. A really, I think, special label doing something unique in the market and important. So if that's not enough labels for Fabian, I don't know what is. An incredible artist in so many different ways. It's really a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the series.
Thank you. Well, an additional label that I'm very happy with is father. I just became a father, so yeah.
Yes, you did, which is probably, that label probably floats to the top, right? That becomes kind of shadows over everything else.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It reframes well, all the other things, I suppose.
Exactly. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, we are thrilled. And as I've told all the guest artists, one of the things I love about this series is that the artists that span the residency were selected both by myself and Andy, the managing director, but also a group of students in the jazz program. So they reviewed all of these great proposals that people sent in, which means that the students were wanted to hear more from you. And we got that in your incredible presentation about self-teaching. And so today's Q&A session is a series of questions that have come in from students, from faculty in our jazz program, from friends in the jazz community. So I thought I'd just launch in. I told Fabian I have a whole bunch of questions, and it gets easy for me and hard for him because he gets to be the brilliant one now. So these questions come from all over the place and in no particular order, but this actually is my question. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about founding your record label. I've followed your record label from the very first days. I think its mission, its guiding principles are incredibly important, and I think it's a really important model that other folks might benefit from thinking about as far as how the marketing and commodification of music happens. And so I'd love to just hear you talk a little bit about how you've managed to fuse political, environmental, and social justice ideologies with the business of record production. So that's my leading question.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can go back all the way to the beginning, which is the year was 1984. No, no, no. My whole life, I don't know why, but I've always been attracted to nature. I've been attracted to the environment. And then, in addition to that, when I moved to an urban setting like the Bronx in New York, I saw a different sort of dimension of what environmentalism is and what naturalism is. And it relates to a term that's sacrifice zones, which is basically low-income communities that are taken advantage of by industries such as the fossil fuel industry or the coal industry, places like that, where they'll basically use those areas where low-income communities live and just dump pollution on them, and you have much higher rates of cancer and breathing issues. So that's kind of where it all kind of clicked for me. The idea of the beauty of nature, but then also the injustices that low-income communities have to endure. So what I started doing is doing research. So I started going to the Museum of Natural History, and I met somebody there who worked at the sustainability department of the Museum of Natural History. His name was Michael J. Foster. Sadly, he's passed away since then. But it was enlightening for me to be, as a musician, to be speaking to somebody who does research for a living and writes these academic papers. And I think I can handle academic papers in the music world, but this was a whole other thing in the science community. So the initial idea was to form something surrounding the idea of hugs, which is historically underserved groups. Because having grown up as a Hispanic male in Miami, I felt very isolated in the things that I was interested in, which were classical music, jazz, and nature. So because I felt so lonely, I wanted to create an organization that really championed an appreciation for music and environmentalism and sustainability for minorities, basically. I told you I was going to take it way back. So then I was fortunate to go on a tour that passed through Johannesburg in South Africa. I was playing with Terence Blanchard there, and we had a couple of days off, which was a blessing. And I went to the Apartheid Museum. And right off the bat, when you get, first of all, the person that drove us in the car was a Black South African man who was old enough to have known what it was like to be treated by the government as non-equal. Because it's only in the 90s that the apartheid ended, and there's still, the repercussions of it are still felt, the ripples of it are still felt today. And just having a conversation with that man on the way to the museum was just extremely powerful for me, because it's one thing in the US, we have a lot of problems, but it's in the 60s that technically the government did what it did. In South Africa, it was very recent, relatively speaking. But anyway, you get to this museum, and right off the bat, you're forced to decide where you stand on the issue, because they have two entrances. They have an entrance for colored and non-colored. And I'm a white Cuban, which is in the U.S. is considered brown, which is we can abstain from talking about that. But and I was with two Black friends of mine. I was with Kendrick Scott and Joshua Crumley, who are two African-American men. And I was standing in front of this entrance, just stupefied by the situation. I walked in through the colored section. I determined, but anyway. It was an extremely powerful moment for me. I learned a lot about Nelson Mandela's philosophies and bringing people together. And that was the moment that I decided that whatever organization I was going to create was going to be welcoming to everyone. So then initially I was going to try to start a nonprofit that would commission people that cared about the environment and had a curiosity for music, and do that. But then coming back from Australia, I remember that it was the night that David Bowie died. I couldn't sleep because of the jet lag, because of coming back from Australia, and all these ideas were just churning in my head. And that's when it all kind of came together. At that moment, I thought up with the Biophilia, which is, I don't have one here because I'm not home. It's an all paper origami, basically substitute for a CD. It's got a download code inside, and it's way more environmentally friendly than the plastic of the CD. So that idea came about, that sleepless night, the idea that as musicians, we could collaborate with the community and volunteer in different events that nonprofit organizations put together, like River Sweeper, which is the Hudson River. Sorry, not the River Keeper, which is the Hudson River. Basically, this angel organization that protects the Hudson River. The NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, just collaborate with these organizations to hands-on do something about it, in addition to the Biophilia. And that's basically the story of Biophilia Records. Just I wanted to bring together people that had a sort of a masterful command of their instrument and the craft of composition, and just the love that they feel for the music is oozing out of everything that they do. That, and then also a genuine concern for the climate crisis that we're experiencing. The climate crisis, and also what's happening as far as extinctions of species. We're going through a 5th mass extinction right now, which means that more than 50% of species are disappearing forever. And it's something that doesn't get spoken about as often as I think it should. So that's my short answer.
Well, I think it would be hard to have a short answer to something that really clearly comes from so many different places. It's just, people really should see those biopholias are stunning. Everything, I just have been very impressed with the whole project. The graphic design components are so engaging, and of course the music is incredible, and it's also promoting a lot of young and emerging artists as well as established artists. It's just I think it's an incredible model, and I hope that everybody is inspired by your label and wants to do their version of it, because the world would be a better place if we had more of those. I think. Yeah.
I mean, I was just gonna say, one of the nicest moments that I've experienced, back when you could sit in an audience, I would go whenever I could, because I was traveling a lot, but whenever I could, I would go to a show of one of the Biophilia Records artists, and I would just like to sit in the audience, hopefully people not knowing what role I played in the whole thing. And yeah, at one time at the Jazz Gallery, my beloved Jazz Gallery in New York, I was sitting in the audience, and I overheard audience members just say how they didn't realize how bad straws were, and they had learned about that because of the label that this artist is in, so they're not going to use straws anymore. I was like, yes. It made me, I was just like that creepy guy, like, what are you guys talking about?
Well, and it's important to have those moments. Not that everybody needs a lot of feedback and confirmation, but it's nice to know that the goals that you set out for yourself are happening. I'm glad that you got that moment.
Yeah.
I have a totally different, all my questions are totally different. It's kind of like a left turn after a left turn. One of our instructors here asked a little bit of a long question, but you talked a bit about fear in your presentation, which I think is a really important issue. I think all of us who are music educators, collaborators, realize that it's a bigger issue than we talk about. Speaking of things we don't talk about very much. Question was, I think fear is such a powerful force for artists, and it's a roadblock for a lot of student musicians. We think we're afraid of making mistakes, but I'm not sure that's quite it. I hear students making mistakes all the time in the practice room, and while it might be frustrating, they don't lock up or get fearful like they do when they're in a rehearsal. So I've come to think it's more of a social fear, a fear of how others will perceive you if you make mistakes. I wonder if this is something you've experienced or seen in your students or with fellow musicians. Because you spoke so articulately about fear, curious to know how you think we can combat fear in general, or that fear of playing with other people, that social aspect, because I think it does so much to inhibit our openness to the music and to each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll preface it by saying that by absolutely no means am I an expert in this. I've just read a few books and, have had my life experience. But yeah, it can be an incredibly debilitating thing to find yourself in a situation where you are so fearful and scared that you don't do anything, that you abstain from participating And I think I mentioned this in the video, but that's the real sort of tragedy. That's the real quote unquote failure, when the fear seems like it's so powerful that you freeze and you don't participate. To me, that the way that I absolutely experience that to this day all the time, because I am a human being. I'm a social animal, and as much as I say that I don't care what other people think, of course I do. You know, and I think we all do. You know, in different shades of existence. But what I found was extremely helpful is to just uh, learn as much as I could about psychology, talk to as many people as I could openly about my experiences, and then hopefully they share their experiences. Uh, and that's the most helpful thing. It's just being able to talk to people about how you feel, and they share how they feel, and that's just sort of it's mutually beneficial. It's mutually therapeutic. Is therapeutical a word? I don't think therapeutical is therapeutic. Having said that, there are many people out there that choose to live their lives a certain way, and will never open up like that with you. And we respect each other, and that's what makes the world such a vibrant place. The diversity in approaches to how we live. If someone watching here is not one of those people and wishes that they could talk about things openly, the next best thing is reading about it, reading other people's stories, things that they have shared. And I think I mentioned this in the book. There's in the presentation. There's an absolutely incredibly helpful book out there called "The Body Keeps the Score." It might be a little intense because some of the recollections that this psychiatrist runs down are pretty intense. It has to do, as far as I can remember, the opening patient went to war and is dealing with the trauma of coming back from war. But basically, that's just try to read stories, other people's experiences, see what it's been like for other people. I would say, because it's incredibly what's the word, empowering, to know that you're not a freak. We've all gone through very challenging moments, especially as people that literally open ourselves up for criticism. That's what we do. We get in front of people so that people think something about what we're doing. So it's absolutely natural that we get self-conscious. But the part that I won't sugarcoat is that it is a failure to not participate because fear has taken over you. It's not a failure to make mistakes. It's a failure to not even put yourself in a situation where you can make mistakes. And it's okay to fail as well, but when that becomes the thing that you do, abstain from participating, then I think we have to really have reflect on what we're doing, and that it's. I mean, I don't mean to make it sound like this world-ending situation, but that's a sign that there's some foundational things that might need to be looked at more in depth. But that book is amazing. The Body Keeps the Score. I would recommend that book.
I know a lot of educators who have used that book in completely different disciplines and contexts, both in their own teaching, but also in the explorations of literature and cultural studies. I think people who have not read that book, go find that book, buy a book. Yeah. And I do like that you frame that as, if we don't see messing up in front of other people as a failure, but not even trying, not participating, if that's the failure, then everything else is a success. It's just some is a little bit more successful.
Yeah,
I really like that frame a lot, and I just really appreciated as well that you addressed that, because it's, especially for student musicians, I think it's such an underlying condition, because we are so overwhelmed with how much there is to know, and we're aware, if we're self-aware at all, of how much we don't know, which of
yeah.
course then makes us fearful. But the only way you get to know that is by doing it and participating. I think I love
And
the
I,
way you
yeah,
frame that.
and I will add one thing that for me has helped me. This isn't something that I learned anywhere. I just felt it just kind of clicked one day. I make many, many mistakes. Any musician that's ever played with me can attest to this. I make them. And the thing that it's like Zen Buddhism and meditation. You have to be so at peace with all the errors that happen. And for me, because you have to be able to just let go of that self-hatred immediately. If you don't want the music to be an absolute train wreck, it is really hard to love yourself in that moment enough to say, you know what, that happened, but let's move on. And the way that I have been able to accomplish that most of the time, not every time, because sometimes I'm like really pissed at myself. Um, it's just the word grateful. That I should say that in my mind. I think it, I'm like, yes, I made a mistake right now, but I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to make that mistake. I'm so grateful that I'm playing with these musicians right now. I'm so grateful that this music is happening in the universe, that I have the ability to let go of all that anger that I had towards myself and commit myself to the continuity of this music out of gratefulness. Um, and hopefully that's something that can help your students. Yes, they played an E major on a C minor chord, but I they should be so grateful that like that they weren't. I don't mean to belittle other people's living situations by saying this, but there are obviously jobs that we don't want to have, that we find ourselves having because of money situations, things like that. If you're a student of music and at that moment you are not at that other crappy job and you're getting to play that E in a C minor chord, that is better than being at that other crappy job. And there's a certain amount of gratefulness that goes towards being in that situation versus this other one that we must never forget. So being grateful, yeah, that'll help.
I love that, and it reminds me of something that I tell my students a lot of the time, which is, as a classroom instructor, I get to read student concert reviews all the time, and students who have never been performed music themselves. I can't tell you how many dozens of times a year I hear students saying, I wonder what it feels like to be up on stage. It looks so amazing. I wish one time I could experience what that saxophone player was experiencing in the middle of that song. And they're talking about student musicians who are making all kinds of errors that I'm sure they're criticizing themselves for, that you don't realize. I mean, gratitude's the right word, but you don't realize what an incredible privilege it is to be doing that, and how the vast majority of people in the world never get to step up on that stage or into that moment and make music with other people, and they genuinely are envious of that experience. And of course, you can't. It's hard to keep that in mind all the time when you're worried about that
Yeah,
C major, C minor chord. But it is such a gift, and we're very lucky
it's
to do it.
yeah, it's freaking magic. You're doing magic. Like
Yes.
that's awesome. You know,
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I love it.
yeah.
So a more specific question about practice. I love that you acknowledge how important it is to practice away from your instrument. Can you give us some more examples of what that might look like, or what that looks like for you if you're away from your instrument?
Well, literally, it looks like this. So, um, no, I mean, I guess that answers the
Perfect
question.
answer. There we go.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me specifically, I guess, harmony wise, if there's a new voicing that has come to my life, I visualize it and I try to hear it. Like right now, I'm visual. There's a new Keith Jarrett voicing that I realized that he was playing, that I've been listening to this album for now 20 years. Yeah, since I was 16. And I never realized that he was playing that specific voicing. And that specific part of the tune. And yeah, so in my head, I'm just like visually seeing where that chord is, like in the D1 goes like this. If I'm in A flat, it goes like that. Like I visually see the keyboard. Obviously rhythmic things as well, like you're just tapping them out throughout the day. Everybody's different. Some people are more visual, some people are more oral. For me, I would say I'm like 70% visual, 30% oral when it comes to practicing away from my instrument. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's not that hard to imagine because like we're surrounded by screens all the time. But imagine you have your internal mind iPhone screen up there and you're just watching the things that you're practicing. That's basic. I mean, for me, that's how it goes. I'm driving a lot more here than I do in New York because there's no subway here. So I have to balance concentrating on not dying and practicing. So yeah, nobody would want to enter heaven. Like, why did you die? Oh, I was practicing my quadruplets while driving on the highway. But yeah.
Well,
or hell, more likely hell. Nobody wants to enter hell.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a story that, gosh, who was it? It might have been Lionel Hampton. No, I'm sorry, Milt Jackson told about John Lewis, that John Lewis always had a notebook. And you talked, which reminded from your presentation, you talked about the importance of notebook. But he would actually walk around writing, like on the city streets in New York. He'd have a melody or an idea come in his head, and he'd just start writing. And Milt said that they had to pull him out of traffic more than one time because he got an idea in his head and just started writing and walking. So yes, it is a danger. But again, that's an amazing moment to be in too. That's magical. That's if the music has taken over your psychological state that much, I guess. I'm glad that I out of traffic though.
I can think of at least 3 of my peers that I've had to do that for. Not because it like just brilliant musicians, not necessarily they were writing music, but they were just so engrossed in this musical idea that I literally had to pull them away from incoming traffic. So yeah, they shall remain nameless. But
thank you for saving those people.
Yeah.
I have an even more specific question about practice. How do you approach or practice improvising in odd time signatures? Are there any methods that have been particularly helpful? And you talk about that just a little bit in your presentation as well. But I know who sent this question is somebody who's looking for more insights into how to approach odd time signatures, odd rhythms, I think, or time signatures specifically.
Well, I mean, I think it's threefold. And unfortunately, one of them is more challenging during these times, which is just playing with other people and recording it. I hate listening to myself. But it's a very important, useful tool to record yourself and listen back. That's the first thing I'd say in a COVID-less world. Just go and play. The second thing that I would say is transcribe other people's playing. I'll just transcribe it, and not only transcribe that one instrument, but particularly see what the bass player is doing. If the bass player is not the instrument that you're transcribing, and the drums, it's really challenging to transcribe drums, but just the bass, like snare, bass drum, hi-hat, cymbals, just that basics, just have an overview of what they're doing. And then the third thing that I would say is useful is zoom in and out of that odd time signature that you're playing, meaning the smallest subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So that would be 16th notes. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how those two relate. So you have the 5s and the 5 16th notes, and then you have the 5 8th notes on top of that, which visually I would show was slightly bigger. And then you have the 5 quarter notes over that. Then you could do 5 dotted quarter notes. How many times do you have to do the 5 16th note, the 5 16th notes? so that they line up with beat one of those dotted quarter note. Yeah, dotted quarter notes. Wow, that's really difficult to say, especially at 7 a.m. for me. But yeah, just seeing how all these different subdivisions line up, like how many measures does it take for them to line up on beat one? You can either write that out or just set up a metronome and say what I'm listening to there, I'm gonna think of that as the dotted quarter note. And then you clap the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then yeah, I guess it's in line with what I'm talking about now. But so let's say you have so this is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's sorry. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh man, I can't do this right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Give me 1 second here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what I'm trying to do is with my hand, with my voice, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So just have like a bigger subdivision and a smaller subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. There it was. It just took a second for it to. But just trying stuff like that out. Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. Embarrassing situations. That was a success, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think then part 5 is you can't. Odd time signatures are just harder before 8 or 9 in the morning, right? We're just not meant to do.
Yeah.
Because what I did not mention at the beginning of the Q&A is that you are joining us from Perth, Australia, and it is exceptionally early there, whereas it's this lovely, almost dusk time here in the prairie in Illinois. Perfect time for odd time signatures here. But actually, watching you work through that was really instructional, because sometimes when people, masters of the craft, just show up and do everything perfectly, you don't get an insight into their process. But it was actually super cool to just watch you do that, because we saw you teach self-teaching, actually, exactly what you talked about in your presentation. So it was really cool to see the process. So it was a total success. I completely agree.
And I'm not convinced that I did it correctly yet.
and now you're going to be thinking in 5s for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm doing it wrong. I'll practice in my mind, and by the end of this, I'll have what I'm trying to do.
This will turn into a composition too. See, it's all fodder for.
Yeah.
I guess I did organize these questions a little bit. They get super specific, and then they pull back a little bit. I told you I had a very, very specific question for you. This is from one of our friends, fantastic piano player here in the area. He asks, what signal chain or tools do you use to get real-time ambient looping effects and textures on the acoustic piano in your New York apartment? Early in the pandemic, I checked out your live stream with Linda from your apartment and checked out the Biophilia Records Fest. And thus the question, is it just mic interface Ableton with a particular Ableton effect, or is it something more complex? This is for the real tech heads out there.
I just want to make sure that I answer the question correctly. Could you read the very first part of the beginning of the question?
What signal chain / tools do you use to get real-time ambient looping effects and textures on the acoustic piano?
Oh, okay. Well, the word that stuck out was looping, because that's kind of, I don't really do looping. I do effects, and I do ambient stuff, and delays, which I guess delays are micro loopings. It's a variety of things. I use like physical effects pedals, and I also I don't think that I use the laptop for effects. I do use a synth that like a virtual instrument that um, that particular piano in New York, which I miss so much, has MIDI built in. It's an acoustic piano that is able to send out MIDI. So when I do play any synthesizers, uh, I don't remember how I did it for those specific sessions, but I did have the option that I could play an acoustic piano that would send out a MIDI message to my laptop. And Omnisphere is the virtual instrument that I use the most. So it would have most likely been Omnisphere that you would hear as a virtual instrument. As far as the effects, I have contact microphones that are making contact with the soundboard of the piano, and that's the signal path. That's where it begins. That then goes into a volume pedal, which kind of works in the reverse of how volume pedals usually work. Volume pedals usually allow for sound to go out, but in my instance, I allow for sound to come in so it goes from the piano to the contact mic into the volume pedal within reverse so that I can control the signal coming out of that volume pedal, then goes through the effects. I have a bunch of different pedals that I've spent a lot of money on. It's definitely a rabbit hole. And yeah, so then that goes out into the real world. That's basically how it works. So contact mic, volume pedal, effects, and then effects to either a monitor speaker or audio interface or whatever. Yeah.
That was beyond my comprehension. I'm a lowly vibraphone player, and although you could probably do that with vibraphone, but it would be
yeah, actually I've seen people do it.
Yeah. Well, I am positive that Daryl, who sent us that question, is going to be playing around with some things like that. He was very inspired, clearly.
And there's there's a variety of different contact microphones out there, but I use Yamaha contact mics, which are a Japanese company. And I went like this as if I know that Japan is over there.
Well, we're going to take your word for it.
My sense of direction is so bad. This is before iPhones, that my family sent me compasses to New York. So I could literally use a compass when I first moved there to know where I was going. So I am positive that Japan is not there.
Yeah. Well, we would never ever know. You should have just asserted it with confidence.
Yeah.
Believed you 100%.
Which is another lesson in improvised music. Just assert conviction and it'll sound right.
Yes.
Japan is there. Yeah.
There you go. My husband always says you can walk into any locked room or kind of reserved space if you walk in with a clipboard and you look like you know what you're doing. You could probably walk into any space on Earth and people would assume that you belonged there. I think it's the same approach. I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Not that I'm advocating that for everyone, but there you go.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more questions. One, this is a big question. You talked about this a little bit kind of throughout your presentation, but it wasn't the focus of your presentation per se. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected your life as a performing musician, especially as somebody who's obviously you're invested in composing and your record label, but you do this year, notwithstanding, a lot of touring and traveling, and that's been a huge part of your professional career. But how that's impacted your life as a performing musician, maybe things that you learned about your relationship to music during this time, and or goals that you have once we're on the other side of this. That's 3 questions, but they're all this crazy year related, I guess.
Yeah, and actually, as we're speaking right now, this is the 1-year anniversary this is exactly when the lockdown started for me. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just been such a mess in some regards, and in other. I mean, I'm a father now. It's been. I don't know how to phrase this in a way that doesn't overwhelm look, the chaos that has happened, but within all this chaos, I am completely in love with this new little human being that's in my life. And I don't know if that would have been the case had the pandemic not happened. Not to get into my personal life too much, but my wife and I both travel a lot for our work. And here was a situation where we couldn't. And now we have a family, and it's just as tragic as this year has been for the world. For me, it's I hate to it's such a I'm just I don't know how to say this, but good things happened for me during the pandemic, and I am very thankful for them. On as far as speaking about work-related things, it's been, as everyone knows, it's been extremely challenging, especially running a label. That's been really hard because people are struggling financially, and here I am saying, please buy our music, which is it's a very hard line to walk. But it's like anything, the label has to be sustainable, financially, and these artists are depending on me. They're handing me their baby and saying, here, raise this child. So it's an immense responsibility for me, and it's been very difficult to navigate it throughout the pandemic. How to keep a label alive. But on the other hand, I have learned so many. I feel like every single day of this pandemic, I have learned something new every day, because there's been so many challenges, technical aspects of, okay, here's an idea. How do I manifest this into the real world? So I mean, I feel like I have learned a million things, specifically about photography and video and graphic design, all these things that I don't think I would have learned about. And I could look at it in such a way that it's frustrating because it's not music. But honestly, lately I feel like it's art. I'm learning about different, like, interdisciplinary traditions, albeit at a very basic level for me, outside of music, like visual arts, videography, all those things. I have the utmost respect for the craft of all those things. So I would never call myself a videographer or photographer or anything like that. But I've learned a lot more about it than I had before, and I think that sort of enriches my ability as a musician to express emotions. And I feel a lot more at home now collaborating with visual artists than I would have before, because I have a very basic understanding of how they view the world, because I can relate to the struggles that they've experienced as visual artists in thinking of something and then bringing it to existence. I'll be honest, a lot less practicing than I wish I could do, just because there are all these other things that I have to do to just stay alive, to stay afloat financially. But it's okay. It's all right. I'm learning a lot of things outside of music that I'm grateful to have learned. That's my honest answer for what it's been like for me. I haven't been able to compose. Actually, I've been able to compose less now than I could before the pandemic, just because of the amount of non-musical things that have to happen in the virtual world online. Before you'd fly somewhere, you maybe have a rehearsal with a string quartet the day before the gig, and the next day you have a sound check and you play, and that's it, you're gone. Yep. I did a thing with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra where they recorded, there's a piece I wrote, it's a 9-movement suite called Alcanza with a string quartet, and they recorded their parts in Detroit, and I recorded the trio here in Perth, and a singer in Adelaide. And that took like 3 months to pull it together. It involved Detroit sending me a 4 terabyte hard drive full of video files, because it's an hour long, and I think there were maybe 20 something camera angles. So it's not as simple as just showing up and playing a gig. I've had to learn a lot, and institutions that ask artists to do what they normally would have done in pre-pandemic days, which is to do a masterclass or to do a performance. Completely understandably, they don't have the budget to provide you the amount of money that you actually need to. Because what musicians are being asked to do nowadays is not just make an album for every gig, but make a movie of it too. Yep. Which is an incredible amount of work to do, and honestly, in the real world would be in the range of over $10,000 to really do what you're being asked to do, minimum $10,000. So in order for us to, as musicians, to be able to like still make a little bit of a profit from getting paid then you have to do all these things yourself. So yeah, and thank you, Knox College. I've been compensated beautifully. Thank you.
I'm writing more checks right now.
No, but that I'm just being real and saying what the reality of the situation has been this last year. A lot of computer time, a lot of it,
Which is which almost none of us got into this art to be on the computer all the time. I'm sure people could start saying that about all kinds of professions right now. And I think that's also something that artists, I think we all feel uncomfortable talking about the financial side of it, but I also think that it's important too, because I think particularly people who consume art as audience members, consumers, don't have a sense of what that economy is like, nor should they. It's not their world, but
exactly.
It is labor, it is equipment, it is training, it is technology, and we like to kind of pretend like it all just happens magically and in the moment and it's perfection, but it's work. It's wonderful work, but it's work just like every other job, and takes time and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So I always am actually glad when artists talk about that aspect of what we do, because we have to live. We have to support ourselves and our families, and that does not just happen magically. The music may be magic, but those things aren't magic.
Well, I mean, there's a certain magic to it. Like if you want to get hippie about it,
I suppose,
like math is pretty magical too. So, but like,
it's a magic I've never ever understood.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, I have one last question, and I actually kind of told you in advance, just when we were talking about how our discussion was going to go, that we like to ask all of our artists, both in this virtual series, but when we have artists on campus for in-person activities, we always sneak this question in, mostly selfishly, so that we can add to our listening lists. But curious to know who or what you're listening to right now. What in this week, this month, what's been on your playlist? Who are you being inspired by right now?
Well, I mean, a lot of children's music, and I don't say that, I don't say that looking down. I'm actually really fascinated by the tradition of composers creating music for children. Brahms was somebody that did, so his lullaby is like but what's her name? Consuelo Velasquez. Consuelo Velasquez is somebody that I've been listening to. Everybody knows who she is, and nobody realizes that they know who she is. She wrote Bésame Mucho. She wrote Bésame Mucho when she was 15 years old, and the story goes that she had never actually kissed anyone. But she's an incredible Mexican pianist and composer that had just gone outside my radar. She wrote this song called Cachito, which is a song that my mom sang to me when I was a child. It's Cachito, Cachito, Cachito mío, pedazo de cielo que Dios me dio. And that's a song that I've been singing to my son, and I just kind of started researching it. And yeah, she was like the McCoy of Mexico. Like, I mean, you would think that somebody that wrote Besame Mucho would be like this gentle piano player, but she is rough. Like she like breaks pianos. I couldn't believe it when I started watching some of her videos. So yeah, Consuelo Velasquez is somebody that I've been checking out. Also somebody who sings that song that I just sang, Cachito, Nat King Cole has an album that's called En Español, I think. He recorded a whole album where I think he went either down to Cuba or the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and he recorded a full album of songs in Spanish. And I've been listening to that album a lot as well for my baby. Burl Ives is somebody that I've been listening to a lot too. The Little White Duck and other music for children. But it's incredible. It's really it's music that I don't think you'd hear nowadays, just because of the way that things work now. You wouldn't hear somebody sing like that, or at least not in mainstream. You'd have to go to like the Appalachia if you're north of a certain place, in Appalachia if you're south. That's it.
Yep,
You'd have to go. You'd have to go there and like really seek it out to hear somebody singing like that. Yeah, the Grey Goose is a song. Like, it's a heavy song that, yeah, it's a children's song, but I think there's undertones of slavery and stuff like that. The Grey Goose, and also I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger. Man, like really, really powerful songs about people from the Appalachian country. Basically, as far as I understand it. If I'm mistaken, I apologize, but that's yeah. So folk songs. I've listening to Burl Ives sing children's song has led me to just go down that rabbit hole of Joni Mitchell. I've been listening to Travelogue a lot lately. Vincent Mendoza's orchestration of it's just butter melting music. I don't know. It's just like incredible.
That's a genre that I had never thought about. That's a perfect genre.
Yeah. And, obviously the artists that are in the label, Gian Slater is someone, she's a singer that we're releasing an album on. And I started listening to her previous work, and it's amazing. She's an amazing singer and composer. Yeah, I've been listening to Gian Slater's music a lot lately.
That gives us a lot to listen to, and I always love hearing artists talk about. I've never ever had an artist answer that question all in one genre or style, and I think it's important for our students to hear that musicians who may self-associate as a jazz musician or whatever genre, that they're all listening with these big ears, and that all of that music informs who they are as composers, performers, improvisers, and it's okay to listen to Burl Ives and Joni Mitchell back to back, and that's going to do something really interesting in your brain, probably.
Well, it's I don't know, to make an analogy, it's like somebody proclaiming that they will only eat Italian food and nothing else. Okay, sure, you can do that, but sushi is delicious. I don't know,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that was like a very, I don't know, I don't know why I chose sushi. That's a very expensive.
Sushi is delicious.
Yeah, but Mexican food, not that. Whatever. Just let the comments roll. Go ahead.
Well, but it reminds me of, I was really taken by the comment that you made in your video about when you talked about kind of defining your aesthetic preferences, and you used that food analogy there. When you talked, I just love the way that you framed that. It's not who your favorite chef is. It's the flavors that you like. It's the combinations, it's the techniques. It's these, the taste that you are looking for. I love that, and I'm totally going to steal that when I teach from here on out. I've already told you I'm going to steal a couple of other things that you introduced.
I'm glad.
But that's the whole idea, right? We're all supposed to be learning from each other. So, well, you have been incredibly graceful and erudite in being on the spot for the last almost hour. I have to thank you for all of the students and our colleagues and friends who sent in questions. not just for our chat today, but for just that incredible presentation you put together. I mean, there's so much in it. I really do think it's something that anyone can revisit multiple times and take 5 minutes out of it and turn that into a week or a month or 6 months of practice. I mean, there's so many ideas that you present there, which is a real gift, and we are very grateful for it. So thank you for all of that.
Sure, thank you. And one thing that I didn't get to in the video is just because I ran out of time, but one of the best ways of self-teaching is to teach other people. For me to put that video together to quote unquote teach, it provided me with an opportunity to really like pinpoint certain methods and it taught me. It was a tool for self-teaching for me to put that together for you. So, I mean, I think it's a common saying that if you only really know something if you can teach it to someone else. So yeah, I would encourage students to, just talk to each other and teach each other stuff, and then you'll realize, oh, I guess I don't really know that.
Or I really do understand it.
Oh yeah, sorry.
You've never learned how to articulate that, and you realize that you do have an embedded understanding of something that you've just never put into words. I think that's a fantastic point. So a million thank yous to you, and thank you to everyone who joins us and who's watching this from around the world. Thank you again to the Jerome Mirza Foundation and Knox College. And a quick note that Fabian's keynote presentation is up on the Knox College YouTube channel now and is available. So share it, help other people learn how to self-teach. And this Q&A will also be available on the Knox College YouTube channel for the duration of the virtual residency. And we do have 3 more keynote presentations coming up. The next is March 21st, Sunday, March 21st, 3 p.m. Nduzzo Vakatini will be presenting on, he's talking about spirituality and sound, ritual, community. It's this amazing combination of his deeply philosophical and kind of spiritual training as a healer and improviser and composer and band leader. I just got to take a sneak peek at his presentation today. It's amazing. Cool. I could listen to him talk forever. And then he'll be joining us for a Q&A, and he'll be joining us from South Africa. So we really are. I feel like I'm traveling around the world from my office here in Illinois. So join us on Sunday, March 21st to meet Nduzzo and hear a really inspiring conversation as well. And you can follow us on Facebook. You can check us out at the Knox College website. Thank you, Fabian. It's been such a pleasure to get to talk to you. Oh, you've got something else.
Well, no, the rhythm. I just want to make sure that, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are the quarter notes, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh man, I was just doing it. 1, 2, 3, 1. See, now I'm put on the spot. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is very embarrassing.
When you master it, you'll have to send us like a little micro layers of 5 tutorial.
It's just because I'm on the spot. Like I can totally do this. It's just because I'm on the spot, and I feel like it's my duty to show the students that you can overcome this fear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. There it was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. God, all right.
Well,
All right.
I won't clap that way. I'll clap
Yeah.
that way. Okay, I'll be doing that the rest of the night too. So thank you. You've got
It's
it in my head.
just as proof. It's 7:34 in the morning here. That's what I'm blaming this on. And stage fright. That was stage fright. Everybody's just got to see what stage fright is. There you go.
But as I said, we also get to see the process of learning something and teaching yourself and getting it. So this has been super fun. You're going to be clapping in 5 the rest of the day. I'll be clapping in 5 for a couple more hours until it's bedtime. Thank you, Fabian, very, very much. It's been just a pleasure, and thank you for participating in this experimental jazz series that we're doing. I think it's just been a pleasure for us, and we've learned a bunch. So thank you, and I will say good evening to all of our, good evening or good morning to all of our friends who are watching around the world. And we'll see you hopefully on Sunday, March 21st.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be watching. Yeah.